Thank you, Jacob. Just a few words of discussion. Starting a completely new book, and this book is considered to be so important that what I'd like to do tonight is just read to you a few summaries and maybe mention one or two highlights and morals and principles the rabbis had drawn from this, but then tomorrow morning, inshallah, to select one or two and go into them in more depth. So let me tell you, but I like to introduce it at least to you on a Friday night. The second book of Moses was originally called the Book of the Going Out of Egypt, but at a very early date, it came to be known as Shemot, which of course comes from the first line that we read on a Shabbat morning in Shul. And these are the names. It comes from Ve'eleh Shemot, and these are the names. And it got the whole book of Exodus itself got the name from the original Greek translation. And it's from the Greek word, the departure of the children out of Egypt. Now, it's very interesting, and this for me is very important. I have a lot of very close Greek friends. The name applied to the Septuagint, the ancient Greek translation of scriptures. Now, the Greek translation of scriptures, unlike the Romans and others, stayed very strictly to the original meaning of the Hebrew word. They were very close to that era, and they kept the same vowels. So that's where the word Exodus comes from. The book of Exodus is the natural continuation of Genesis. Genesis describes the lives of the fathers of the Hebrew people. It describes, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, etc., and it goes right down. Oh, and the mothers. We mustn't forget the mothers. We include the prophets, both male and female, and our leaders. So, however, Exodus is a completely new beginning of the formation of our nation. In Exodus, we become a nation, a people. Before that, we concentrated on individual leaders. Then in the book of Exodus, we concentrate on becoming a nation. Let's see what else it says. And very briefly, it records Israel's enslavement in Egypt and the hardships they had. Now, I'd like you to remember that our time in Egypt, and there's a lot of dispute about that because we can't really pinpoint how that era checked time, but it was almost 400 years. Some say 380, all right. But for 200 of those years, under Joseph, and that the way he became this virtually the family of Pharaoh itself, the Jews were treated wonderfully. And then to me, the most prophetic words, which we will read tomorrow, is there came a time after a couple of 100 years, some say 180, there came a time, there came a new king, a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. It's very similar in our era. I worked with Mandela at least a couple of years when I left university, and you've heard me say it. I'm not saying it as a badge of honor at all, but my mentality is based on that era. But many people who were also of that era and who are in politics today have forgotten it. they're now in a new era where they don't understand and they don't enact Ubuntu, which is the same as Shema Israel. When I look in your eyes, I see myself. When I look in a child, I see myself. When I look in an elderly woman in the country, I see myself. When I look at my animals, I see myself. They've forgotten that. It, to them, and then the tragedy, of course, of the people who are looking for an excuse not to remember, and then they say, ah, Mandela was a sellout, or he was used. He wasn't used. He was totally in control. But everything in Torah depends on what you believe. And that is why we are told to never forget and judge a person by their actions, as we did with Mandela, who was his actions. So let's go back to this. Okay. It records Israel's enslavement in Egypt and ultimately the deliverance from the house of bondage. And just as we were delivered from the house of bondage of apartheid, which made our subconscious mind see people differently to each other and look down. Now, that thank God, is out of many minds. And of course, there's still some minds who want to keep it. Simple as that. So I see a lot of analogies. It also describes the institution of Passover, which we'll read, but won't go into great detail. And most importantly, the covenant at Mount Sinai, the organization of public worship that was to, in other words, exactly as we are organized by our Siddur, our daily worship prayers, but most importantly, the Shabbat services. All of that was dictated already. When I say dictated, I mean recorded, not dictated in the ugly sense, recorded already in the book of Exodus. So it's of tremendous importance, because without our meeting regularly on a Shabbat, without you beginning to really understand the depths of Torah wisdom, we cannot be a people. This is what binds us together. And I'm very proud to say that all of those with us tonight, and I can see each of your faces and names there. Okay, Rich, I can't see your face, but most faces, and I can see all the names. We've been through so much already together. Many of us have been together since I took over the shul, or led the shul rather, especially since COVID. We've got more and more people. And those who are constantly, who do their best to come every Shabbat, whether it's in shul or on Zoom, every Shabbat strengthens you, not because it's me, but because we're sharing the wisdom of Torah, which is how we think and how we act. In Judaism, it's not what you believe. As you know, I'm of the ilk. I would worship anyone who says I'm an agnostic or atheist. I never know the difference, not important, because I don't care what you believe. I care how you act. I want to see how you treat someone who's been put in your care by Hashem, who needs you, who may not be a whole soul. I want to see how you treat your family. I want to see how you treat a stranger. And of course, I also respect people who treat God's creation and nature with love, with animals, with insects. Don't hurt anything or threaten anything that's not threatening you, but we must protect ourselves. So it's complicated. So let me just conclude. And then, of course, a very important part of this parasha is it recounts the murmurings and backslidings. It's a funny word they're using in this beautiful book that we use, which gives you the whole of the Torah in English, in Hebrew, and the phonetic, and a great, great importance on explanations. And it says here, what happens if, and they use a word which I don't like, and I looked it up before. It says, it tells you what happened with the apostasy of the golden calf. Do any of you know what apostasy is? It's an awful word and I don't like it. But this was written many, many years ago. It's actually a word that means rebellion. It's actually an ancient word. I think it might come from the Latin or the Greek. I'll check it out. But in today's meaning, it means the rebellion when the people built the golden calf. And perhaps let me just conclude on that for tonight, because it is so important in Judaism. That rebellion, when actually, what does it mean? It means they lost faith. They got frightened. Moses disappeared for another 40 days and 40 nights. He promised them that he'd he'd come back with the 10 Commandments, and they lost faith because it wasn't in the time frame they had in their minds. They expect Moses perhaps to come back in 4 days, and they lost faith. And that rebellion doesn't mean that you have done such a sin that you can never return again, no matter what any of us have done in our past. They're all things we wish we hadn't done. There are many, many things I wish I hadn't done. As Serona knows, I wrote a whole article for the Sunday Times on the words I wish I hadn't said when my mother passed away, and I wish I had have said I loved you more. All of us are in that same boat. But you know what? God promises that if we face that, we must forgive ourselves. And if the person that we wronged is alive, you go to them and you say, I might not agree with you. We had an argument, and it doesn't really matter, does it? I still love you. And of course, that is the new approach we have to take today to understanding how to deal even at a high political level, which I won't go into, because at a Temple Israel level, I'm interested in each and every one of your lives. The politics, I'm more, who's listening to me, but I'm interested in your lives. And that is so, so important that you understand that you are born as a divine spark of this great burst of energy. It's one way of explaining it. And you were born with innocence. And any mistake you made in the past, anything we didn't do correct in the past, it is because we had the wrong information in our minds, which were usually given to us by the people around us, how we grew up. Now, of course, the older you are, or the more traumatic the experience you had, the stronger your mindset is. But everyone with Temple Israel Hillbrow, or you wouldn't be joining us, know that you have the ability to create a wonderful future in spite of any mistake. And God promises us above all in this first chapter of Exodus that there is always that forgiveness. And if Hashem can forgive us, then certainly we can forgive ourselves. The only thing is to get rid of that fear and that panic when you think, will I ever get this right? Because when we have fear and panic in our minds, that is the opposite to saying, in spite of things that are around me at the moment, in spite of my lack of faith in myself, God has told me I do have the ability, and I will, and I am achieving good. And I'm fulfilling my purpose on life. And I believe that all of the purpose in our little Kehila tonight, your purpose is being fulfilled. I know each and every one of you. I know a lot of the pain you've been through and are going through. I know the people in your care that you are healing. I know the light you're giving to each other. And I also know the love you give me. Shabbat Shalom.